We don't make sports videos. We don't make football videos. And we don't make C-score videos. We only make one thing. The ultimate video machine. 75% of the teams in the NFL have completed 59 seasons during the Super Bowl era. When it comes to C-score, naturally, they've each had a best season, a worst season, and one that sits right in the middle. Taking these three scores and adding them up gives us a unique number known as the BMW score. And today we're going to be giving you the BMW score of every single franchise in the NFL, ranking them from lowest to highest. And in case you didn't know, C-score is a metric created by this channel to evaluate every single team during the Super Bowl era beyond simply looking at its record. For a deeper explanation of C-score, be sure to check out the description of this video. There are 4 franchises who have played an even number of seasons since 1966. For those teams, we're still taking the best and the worst, but we will be taking the average of the two in the middle. This is the only time average will come into play. From these set of numbers here, for example, we would be taking the 30, the 25, and the negative 59, even though the average of these 7 numbers is 10. So, median instead of mean for the mathematicians out there. Thank you for joining us today. We're ready to start. Bringing up the rear here, as they so often do when we look at the entire Super Bowl era, are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, with their BMW score of negative 24.919. Now, despite not having a great franchise record, they are 2-time Super Bowl champions. The best of those two also lines up as the best C-score the Bucs have ever had. That would be the 12-4 2002 Super Bowl champions. Their middle team here from 2018 gives us an idea of how moribund the franchise has usually been, because this was a 5-11 squad. Now, they played better than that, and they were actually the reverse of most Tampa teams, fielding an above-average offense, but a terrible defense. As far as their worst score goes, it's also the single worst score in the entire Super Bowl era. That would be their 1976 inaugural season, where they infamously went 0-14. Just ahead of the Buccaneers here are the lowest ranked franchise on this list who have participated in every single season of the Super Bowl era. That would be the Houston Oilers / Tennessee Oilers / Tennessee Titans, with their BMW score of negative 22.254. This franchise has been to the Super Bowl in 1999, but their best C-score comes from their 13-3 2008 team that did go one and done in the playoffs. Only one other franchise on this list is going to have a lower best C-score than this one. Their middle squad comes from the 2016 season. They did go 9-7, and they had a positive point differential of +3, but they did all that against a very easy schedule, lowering that overall C-score. The worst of the bunch is a team that's popped up on this channel from time to time, the 1973 team that made 1-13 look horrible. Good for you, Atlanta Falcons franchise, you did not finish last, but you are 30th with your BMW score of negative 19.712. Now, of course, the Falcons have never won a Super Bowl, but they have made it twice, and the best of those two was their 14-2 1998 squad, who went on the road to defeat the Minnesota Vikings to get to that Super Bowl. Their middle score was even worse than Tampa's middle score. This is from 1982, a strike-shortened season. They went 5-4, but they were outscored despite playing one of the easiest schedules in the league. Though they technically did win the NFC West. We say technically because the NFL discarded division standings that season in favor of conference standings. They did lose in the first round. Their worst season was also their first season. They went 3-11, but they were outscored by 233 points. A fun fact about this team is that they weren't even the worst in the league that year, despite that horrible C-score. Coming up next are the St. Louis/Phoenix/Arizona Cardinals. Yes, they were also the Chicago Cardinals, and they've had other names as well, but these all predate the Super Bowl era. That will also be the case for some other franchises going forward. They sit with a BMW score of -17.693. The Cardinals haven't generally had a good run during the Super Bowl era, but they have made it to the big game once and damn near almost won it, but it's nowhere close to their best team. That would be the 2015 13-3 team that made it to the NFC Championship game before losing to the Carolina Panthers. Their middle score is even worse than Atlanta's middle score and is actually the worst middle season on the entire countdown. This was in 1979, a 5-11 team that was truly nothing special, but it did have Otis Anderson, who won the AP Offensive Rookie of the Year award. The worst of the bunch, and that is saying something, is the clown show that was the 2000 season. Funny enough, they had the exact same point differential of the 1966 Falcons at -233. We saw the old Houston team, and now we see the new one. Not a whole lot of good football being played in Houston. The Texans come in with a BMW score of -16.122. Their top mark comes from the 2011 season when they won 10-6 and made their first ever playoff appearance. The franchise has had seasons with better records, but this is the only positive triple-digit point differential they've ever had, and they performed well in the playoffs. This is the worst best C-score of the bunch, but of course they only became a franchise in 2002 and have had a lot fewer seasons to work with than anybody else. All things considered, their middle score isn't that bad. In their third season of existence in 2004, where they went 7-9 and were showing a lot of promise. That promise came crashing down the very next season in 2005, where they went 2-14. But for the same reason their best C-score is among the lowest, their worst C-score is among the highest, with only 3 franchises scoring higher. They may have ranked number 1 in our most recent video, but this is about the general area where the Jags are being used to in our countdowns. They have a BMW score of -15.146, and they're one of 4 teams where we have to use an average median. Jacksonville has never actually made it to the Super Bowl, but they have been to the AFC Championship game 3 times, and their 1999 squad that went 14-2 is the best of the bunch. Including the playoffs, they went 15-3. And as we've described before, they went 15-0 against the NFL at large, but 0-3 against just one team, the Titans. They've got a couple of bad middle scores here, a 2008 squad that went 5-11, and a 2003 squad that also went 5-11, both performing quite similarly. But that's not nearly as bad as the 2012 team that went 2-14. It gets glossed over because, they're Jacksonville, but also because the Chiefs were even worse that season. Oh, Cleveland. Poor Cleveland.
They took your
team, and then they gave it back. It's kind of like lending out a lawnmower and getting back a lemon. The Browns have a BMW score of -13.339 and are the second team out of 4 that are going to require an average median. Like the Jaguars before them, the Browns have never been to the Super Bowl, but they have made it to the AFC title game 3 times and played in 2 NFL title games. The best was a 10-5 team from 1987 that played well above that record. It was their second consecutive heartbreaking loss in the AFC title game to the Broncos. Their middle scores are a couple of steady teams, an 8-9 squad in 2021 and a 7-9 squad in 1993 that was still having its chestnuts pulled from the fire that was the 1990 season. The Browns have had an expansion team, and they've had a winless team. But worse than both of those was the 2000 squad that went 3-13 with a -258 point differential. Their 161 points scored on the season would be the worst mark in the entire 21st century if the year 2000 was actually part of the 21st century. You almost made it out of the bottom quarter of the league, but you just couldn't do it. Coming in at the number 25 spot are the New York Jets and their BMW score of negative 13.327. It shouldn't really surprise that the one Super Bowl title winning team isn't here, as that team was quite overrated. The 1982 squad, despite being in a strike-shortened year, went 6-3, showing their excellence throughout the year, making it to the AFC Championship game. The middle squad is that somewhat infamous 1991 team that went 8-8 and made the playoffs, while the 10-6 Philadelphia Eagles and San Francisco 49ers, sitting over there in the NFC, couldn't even get in as a wild card. But that said, they did almost win their game against the Oilers. The worst of a lot of bad Jets team is that horrible 3-11 1976 team that gets overlooked because that was the season the Seahawks and the Buccaneers debuted. We have identified this team as the worst forgotten, terrible team of the Super Bowl era. This franchise joined the NFL in the same season as the Jaguars, so just like with Jacksonville, we're going to need to use another average median score. Here we have the Carolina Panthers with a BMW score of negative 11.868. This franchise has been to the Super Bowl twice, but by far the better of the two, and also serving as Carolina's best year, was in 2015, when they went 15-1 and put up a very good playoff performance. That is, until the Super Bowl. Their first middle score was a bounce-back team in 2011 that went 6-10, while only going 2-6 in single-possession games. The other one comes from 2020, when they were 5-11 and only went 3-8 in single-possession games. A 6-10 record in 2011 can only be considered a bounce back because of the terrible, worst Carolina Panthers season that took place in 2010 when they went 2-14. This was their only season ever where they earned the number 1 pick in the draft and then made that selection. This team barely beat out the other team from New Jersey that's pretending to be from New York. This is the New York Giants with their BMW score of negative 7.913. Interestingly enough, BMW's headquarters in the United States are in Woodcliff Lake, New Jersey. No franchise other than the Giants or the Jets are closer to those headquarters, a 16.3 mile drive that takes 35 minutes, according to Google Maps. Somehow, someway, this franchise have won the Super Bowl 4 times, but the only one of those teams that truly stands out takes the number 1 spot in Giants history. That is the 14-2 1986 powerhouse that popularized the Gatorade bath. Their middle score comes from the 2014 season, where they went 6-10. This season was notable for a 7-game losing streak right smack dab in the middle of the season. Remember a little bit earlier when we said the Atlanta Falcons were not 1966's worst team? Yeah, this one was. The 66 Giants went 1-12-1, giving up over 500 points in a 14-game season among a lower scoring environment. That last entry closed out the bottom 10, so just missing that fate, coming in here at number 22 are the Detroit Lions, with their BMW score of negative 7.034. Had the 2024 Lions done just about anything positive in the playoffs, they probably would have taken this best spot. Instead, that goes to their 1970 team that went 12-4 and was perennially stuck behind the Vikings. 2 interesting games from this season: they lost to the Saints when Tom Dempsey set the then NFL record with a 63-yard field goal with half a foot, and they also lost the playoff game to the Cowboys by a score of 5-0. Their middle squad had a middling record of 7-7 in 1975. This was their first season
in the Silverdome, at the Silverdome, at the Silverdome,
which was then known as the Pontiac Metropolitan Stadium. It was also their 7th straight season, finishing second place in their division. Just like the Browns before them, the Lions themselves have a winless season that does not count as their worst. Instead, it's the very next season in 2009 where they did manage to win 2 games, but against a much easier schedule. This is the last of our 4 franchises that require 2 scores for the medium score. That would be the New Orleans Saints with their BMW score of -6.052. The Saints have been to and won 1 Super Bowl, and this does serve as their best team. This was in 2009 where they went 13-3 and fielded one of the greatest offenses in the entire Super Bowl era. Their 2 middle scores were almost a full point apart, whereas the other 3 franchises that needed 2 scores were within 0.2. That would be the 7-10 squad from 2022 and the 7-9 squad from 1978 that was starting to climb out from the sinking depths that were the 1970s for the Saints. And from those terrible years of the 70s, 1975 was the worst of them, going 2-12, giving them 1 win for each of their 2 different head coaches that season. We enter the top 20 with one of the more snake-bit franchises of the NFL, the Buffalo Bills with their BMW score of -5.267. We've gone into depths on this channel about the 1990s Buffalo Bills being highly overrated, with their 4 straight Super Bowl appearances not meaning that much. But it's always with the caveat of the 13-3 1990 squad that was excellent and clearly worthy of being Super Bowl champions. They do check in as Buffalo's best. Their middle squad comes from 2016 where they went 7-9 and started to form into the top level team that they are now. But it was their 17th and final season of missing the playoffs in consecutive years. But we go back to an entirely different era for their worst team, the misery parade that was the 1-13 1971 squad. Buffalo did have a terrible time moving from the AFL to the NFL. 1970 was bad, but 71 was even worse. Welcome to the jungle. We welcome the Cincinnati Bengals into the 19th spot with their BMW score of -4.035. This franchise has made it to the Super Bowl 3 different times, yet the best Bengals team was the 10-4 1976 squad, which we have referred to on several occasions on this channel as criminally underrated. It was just too hard to break through the Pittsburgh Steelers during this era. The 1990s as a decade was a terrible time for the Bengals, but they were almost there with an 8-8 team in 1996 behind a pretty strong offense. They take Cincinnati's middle score. But the worst was yet to come. They fell apart within 3 years to end that terrible decade at 4-12 in 1999. And it must be said, they did so in part by foolishly turning down the draft haul offered to them by the New Orleans Saints. It might be a bit surprising to see this franchise this low on the list. At number 18 are the Philadelphia Eagles. Their BMW score is -3.802. The Eagles are indeed the defending Super Bowl champions, but their first Super Bowl win after 2017, where they went 13-3, is the best here. Making things even sweeter here for the Eagles that season was how overlooked they were. They were home underdogs in their 2 NFC playoff games, and they were underdogs in the Super Bowl as well. For the first time on this countdown, we have a positive middle season. For the Eagles, that came in 1996 where they went 10-6. They made it to the playoffs where they lost to the 49ers on a slip and slide that was disguised as a football field. Yeah, it was quite muddy that day. The 1998 Eagles may stand out as a very bad team, but 1972, where they went 2-11-1, was even worse. In both these seasons, though, the Eagles were indeed the lowest scoring team in the league. I wonder if they've ever considered calling themselves the Southern California Chargers. SC Chargers has kind of a ring to it. This is the San Diego/Los Angeles Chargers, with their BMW score at -1.893. They may have made their one and only Super Bowl appearance in 1994, but that season's not even a top 15 one for the Chargers. The best came in 1979, where they went 12-4 with a powerful defense to go with their normally powerful offense. But in their playoff loss to the Oilers, they turned the ball over approximately 154 times. We go all the way back to the AFL days of 1967 to find their middle score. They went 8-5-1, but they were stuck in a division with the Raiders and the Chiefs. And their worst squad, when they went 2-11-1 in 1973, means that they are the only franchise in the NFL where all three of their teams on this countdown predate 1980. We've reached the top half of the countdown, but we're still in the negative scores. This is the other LA team, actually the Los Angeles/St. Louis/Los Angeles again Rams, with their BMW score of negative 1.112. The Rams are two-time Super Bowl champions in 1999 and 2021, but it's the one that got away in 2001, where they went 14-2 after fixing their defensive problems from the year before, that serves as their best. Their middle team comes from the recently completed 2024 season, which incidentally is the only 2024 season that appears anywhere for anybody. They were 10-7 and division champions, and they are the first team here with a middle score to contain a playoff victory. After that, they gave the eventual champion Eagles their toughest game during the playoffs. Of course, though, their worst team is that 1-15 disaster from 2009. This is the single worst team in the entire free agency and salary cap era. That they even won a game that year is simply shocking. Alright, now we're in the positive realm, and we're doing it with a franchise that joined the league the same year as our bottom-ranked Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This would be the Seattle Seahawks with their BMW score of 0.816. Their one Super Bowl title is naturally for them the best they've ever had at 13-3 after the 2013 season. This team is actually underrated in the annals of great Super Bowl champions. By C-score, it is the single best of the 21st century. Their middle score comes from just 2 seasons earlier in 2011, where they went 7-9. This was right before the true birth of the Legion of Boom that would go on to lead the league in fewest points allowed for the next 4 consecutive seasons. Their worst season makes this BMW ranking look like an actual true average, as it's an almost mirror image of their best season. This of course came from their 1976 expansion year, where they went 2-12. As we move from number 15 to number 14, we've got an over 2-point jump in BMW score. This is the Baltimore/Indianapolis Colts, coming in at 3.186. Like the Rams from 2 entries earlier, the Colts are 2-time Super Bowl champions. And also like the Rams, it's the one that got away that serves as their best, when they went 13-1 in 1968 and had one bad game at the worst time in the Super Bowl. Their middle score comes from 1989. This was an 8-8 team that had a fairly substantially better defense than their offense, despite the offense getting 3 Pro Bowlers while the defense got none. The ugly 1991 squad from 1-15, just 2 seasons later, not only serves as the worst for the Colts, it also serves as the second worst team of the entire Super Bowl era, and the single worst team that wasn't an expansion squad. Our last entry saw a jump of over 2 points in BMW score from the previous entry, and this one is over 3 points. We have the Kansas City Chiefs with a 6.532. The Chiefs have unquestionably made their way into NFL royalty over the past few seasons, with 5 Super Bowl appearances and 3 wins over the last 6. But the best of the bunch was still their old school final AFL championship team from 1969 that went 11-3 and also won the Super Bowl. Their middle score is the highest middle score that we've seen to this point. In fact, it's the 5th highest one overall. They went 8-6 in 1972, but they couldn't snag the AFC's only wildcard spot. Their worst season was truly bad, but in another sense, it also gave birth to their current run. That was when they hired Andy Reid and haven't had a losing season since. But let's not forget how awful they were in 2012 when they went 2-14. Kansas City's division and forever rival beats them out here to the number 12 spot. The Denver Broncos carry with them a BMW score of 8.026. They have 3 Super Bowl championship winning teams from which to choose, but it was the repeat squad of 1998 that went 14-2 that takes the cake here. If only they could have played the Vikings in the Super Bowl that year. It could have been an all-time classic. Their middle score comes from the 2006 squad. At 9-7, they were a perfectly fine team, but it did represent a steep drop-off from the season before. Their worst season comes from the first season of the Super Bowl era. They went 4-10 in 1966 and serve as the lowest scoring team in AFL history. In the first week of that first year, they faced the Houston Oilers. They allowed a touchdown, then they returned the ensuing kickoff for a touchdown before losing the game 45-7. Why is this so special? Why are we bringing it up? Well, it is the first and only time in the Super Bowl era that a team failed to get 1 first down. At the edge of the top 10 is clearly one of the most successful franchises in the entire Super Bowl era. This is the Pittsburgh Steelers with their BMW score of 11.195. There's so much to choose from here, what with their 6 Super Bowl championships, but it's the second of those 6 in 1975, where they went 12-2, that takes the cake as Pittsburgh's best. Of course, they were led by the dominant Steel Curtain defense. They had themselves an excellent middle season in 2006. They only went 8-8, but they were truly way better than that record. This season also served as Bill Cowher's swan song. They were truly undone by this terrible 1969 team that went 1-13. This, of course, affected their overall BMW score. Only one franchise that takes residence in the top 10 has a lower worst score than this. Can you guess who it is? Speaking of that top 10, here we are. And taking that spot are the Oakland/Los Angeles/Oakland/Las Vegas Raiders, the only franchise to relocate 3 times during the Super Bowl era. Their BMW score is 12.691. We've seen this plenty already, another franchise whose best season wasn't a Super Bowl championship season, rather a runner-up year in 1967 where they went 13-1. They probably could have beaten the Packers in the Super Bowl that year if they had played in a stronger league, giving them more preparation for such a game. Their middle score comes from 1993, where they went 10-6. They were outscored on the season, but they won a playoff game before going to Buffalo and leading in the fourth quarter after earlier leading by 11 points. This contest featured 3 missed extra points back when extra points were only 20 yards, and 2 missed field goals. The 0-degree weather and wind chills hitting the -20s certainly had an impact on that. The worst comes from 2006 with a 2-14 record, featuring one of the worst offenses ever. At number 9, we have the highest ranked franchise that entered as an expansion team during the Super Bowl era, albeit in the first season of the Super Bowl era. This is the Miami Dolphins with their BMW score of 16.055. Regular viewers of the channel will probably know this. Even though they went undefeated as Super Bowl champions in 1972, the 1973 team was simply better, even though they only went 12-2. Their middle season does come from 2009, where they were 7-9, but they played a very difficult schedule in order to hit that positive C-score. As we said, their inaugural season was in 1966, but their second season in 1967 was even worse when they only managed to go 4-10. This is now the top 25% of all franchises on this countdown, and we begin at number 8 with the San Francisco 49ers, barely ahead of the Dolphins in BMW score at 16.111. San Fran has 3 top-notch Super Bowl championship teams from 1984, 1989, and 1994. It's 89 that takes the top spot here though, excellent at 14-2, while then outscoring their playoff opponents by an even 100 points. Their middle score comes from the 2003 year, where they were 7-9 but with a plus 41 point differential. This was right before it all started to go very badly. And rock bottom arrived the very next season in 2004, where they were 2-14 and terrible at everything. I watched every game they played that season. Let me repeat myself, they were terrible at everything. After 7 straight entries where the BMW score jumped by more than 1 point, we've now arrived at our 3rd straight entry where the gap has been within half of 1 point. That would be the New England Patriots at 16.522. Oh, they've won all those Super Bowls, many of which were not truly earned. But in fairness to them, they left 2 teams on the table that should have won Super Bowls. One was in 2010, and of course the top score here coming from 2007, where they completed the one and only 16-0 regular season in NFL history. They do have themselves a very high middle score coming from the 2002 squad that went 9-7. Part of what boosted that score up was the fact that they actually faced a hard schedule the year after winning their division. We asked the question just a little while ago about who had the lowest of all the worst scores from the top 10. Did you guess the Patriots? If you did, then good for you, because you know they've had a lot of terrible seasons. And the worst came from 1972. They managed a 3-11 record, but they were outscored on the year by 254 points. We called the Buffalo Bills one of the more snake-bit franchises in the NFL, but no franchise is more snake-bit than the Minnesota Vikings, the only franchise to never win a Super Bowl and to never earn the number 1 overall pick. They're here at number 6 with a BMW score of 17.445. They made 4 Super Bowl appearances in an 8-year span, but it was the first of these that served as their best, when they went 12-2 in 1969. Their upset loss in the Super Bowl that year is somewhat overlooked because of how the Colts lost in the previous season, and the fact that the team they lost to, the Chiefs, were also excellent. It's downright hilarious to see a middle score coming from a 14-3 season, but we do know how fraudulent the 2022 Vikings were. 11 games over 500, yet outscored on the season and going one and done in the playoffs against the Giants. The Giants. Of course, the worst here is the old Les Steckel team of 1984 that went 3-13. I'm sorry, Vikings fans, I know this is not the first time I've mentioned his name. Feel free to hit me with Ken Meyer, Pete McCulley, Dennis Erickson, Mike Singletary, Jim Tomsula, or Chip Kelly. We've entered the rarefied air of the top 5, which does have some outliers. The first here is at number 5 with the Chicago Bears and their BMW score of 19.038. What makes them an outlier is not at all difficult to figure out. This is not only the highest scoring team in Chicago Bears history, it's the highest scoring team ever in the Super Bowl era. The 15-1 1985 squad that crushed everybody on their way to winning the Super Bowl. Taking a look at their middle score though, not only is it the lowest in the top 5, it's also the lowest in the top 10, and it's also the lowest in the top 20. But this 1994 team that went 9-7 made it to the playoffs and even won a playoff game. The worst of the bunch did come in 1975, where they went 4-10, too good a record for the fact that they were in the bottom 3 in both points scored and points allowed. At number 4, we have our first BMW score to make it in the 20s. The Dallas Cowboys, who just scraped by that number with a 20.008. Dallas, of course, has won the Super Bowl 5 times, but the best of the bunch was the one in the middle, their third from 1992, where they went 13-3. Now, this was already the birth of a dynasty, but if it wasn't for the salary cap and free agency era, it could have been way more. This best season comes off their middle season. A double-digit C-score, the first we've seen, when they went 11-5 in 1991. They went on the road to win a playoff game before losing in the divisional round, but it did set the stage for what was to come. In turn, this middle score is 2 seasons removed from their worst score when they went 1-15 in 1989. The Cowboys were the first team to ever win 3 Super Bowls in a 4-season span. Well, they're kind of repeating that feat here by placing 3 teams on this countdown in a 4-season span. The Texans are the only other franchise to place 3 teams within a 10-season span, but they've only had 23 seasons with which to work against the Cowboys' 59. We have our second outlier in the top 5 with the Washington Redskins /football team /Commanders at number 3 with their BMW score of 21.841. Now, you may or may not have taken notice that we've been presenting this countdown with the logo and color scheme based on a franchise's most prominent entries. Even though Washington has only existed as the Commanders for 3 seasons, they still represent a majority of the entries here. It's the same story here as the Bears. In 1991, they won the third of their 3 Super Bowl championships by going 14-2, putting up a C-score that's not only the best they've ever had, but the second highest in the entire Super Bowl era. They only trailed the Bears by around 0.7 points. Their middle season comes from the first year that they were known as the Commanders in 2022. They are to date the only 8-1 team in NFL history. And also like the Bears, they're the only top 10 team with a negative middle score. Their worst score, though, comes from their second season as the Commanders in 2023, where 8-1 looked great next to 4-13. That did lead to an overhaul, though, that so far is looking pretty darn good. They've won the most league championships in NFL history at 13. Coming in at number 2, giving us a big jump in BMW score, are the Green Bay Packers, who sit at 26.518. Of those 13 championships, 4 of them are Super Bowl wins, and they were all excellent. But the 13-3 squad from 1996 is the best. They are still the last team to lead the league in both points scored and points allowed. They have had a lot of lean years though, which lowers their middle score somewhat. This was from 2000 when they went 9-7, the first year under head coach Mike Sherman, but they did miss the playoffs for the second straight season. Now, despite those lean years, it never got too lean. They carry the best of all the worst C-scores when they went 4-12 in 1986. Even though they've only officially been a franchise since 1996, we all do know that these are the former Cleveland Browns. That said, they're taking the number 1 spot on this list, the Baltimore Ravens, with their BMW score of 30.447. The Ravens have won the Super Bowl twice, including with a historically good defense in 2000. But none of those teams top what they did in 2019 when they went 14-2. Every other team in the top 16, representing the top half of this countdown, at least made it to the Super Bowl with their best score. 10 out of those 15 won the Super Bowl. This 2019 Ravens team has the second highest C-score of any team that went one and done in the playoffs. They're behind the 1970 Vikings in that regard, but they do have the highest score ever coming off a bye week. None of this, though, strips away their regular season accomplishments. They do hold the highest middle score on this countdown, but they also had less than half the time to work with than the Cowboys. That said, they are easily the only team with a middle score that is a Super Bowl champion. That 2012 Ravens team is super weird. In addition, they also have the highest of the worst scores on this countdown. But again, they had less than half the time to work with than the Packers. This was 2007 when they went 5-11. That season, though, creates an interesting parallel with the worst season by the Kansas City Chiefs. They both turned things around by hiring a new head coach. The Chiefs picked up Andy Reid, the Ravens picked up John Harbaugh, and they were both picked up from the Philadelphia Eagles. Here is a look at every franchise and how they compare to their ranking from our video listing every franchise's total performance during the Super Bowl era. These are based on rankings update to include the 2024 season, as the original video was posted before its completion. We mentioned the Bears and Commanders as outliers. Well, here they are at number 1 and number 2, with Washington 12 places better and Chicago 15 places better. Nobody else sees an increase of more than 5. 3 franchises, the Bengals, the Falcons, and the Texans, see no shift at all. Nobody took a double-digit dive, but the Steelers get the worst of it thanks to that terrible 1969 season. Just better than them are the Chiefs, in the same boat due to their terrible 2012 season. Thank you so much for making it to this point in the video. We will occasionally do countdowns that include all 32 franchises, and those are invariably longer than our normal offerings, so sticking around this long does mean a lot to me. Please like, share, and subscribe if you've yet to do so, and ding that bell to get notified anytime we release something new. Let me know what you think about all of this. Were you expecting the Baltimore Ravens to top the list? Did you maybe think that either Chicago or Washington could be carried to the top on the strength of their 50+ point Z-scores? Was anyone ranked lower than you expected? Higher? Sound off on these topics or anything else you may have on your mind right down there in the comments section. Thank you so much once again for joining us today, and until next time, I hope you have an awesome day.